Okay guys, we got a video here from Mojo Plays today. This is the top 20 hardest NES games of all time. Personally, I'm hoping this list will be filled with games that are fundamentally sound in design and just actually difficult, rather than being games that are terribly designed and being hard for that reason, you know, like something from LJN, for example. So let's have a look at the list now. We'll see if we agree with it. I mean, I love that they open with a turbo tunnel. It's a dreaded turbo tunnel already.
Welcome to Mojo Plays, and today we're snapping those stupid rectangle controllers. These are the 20 hardest NES games. If you're too young to have played these as a kid, we recommend you get your hands on them to test the limits of your rage.
Sure.
Let's go. Before we continue, we publish content all week long, so be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to get notified of our latest
Yeah, please
videos.
do, guys. These lists take an effort to put
Super
together.
Mario Bros. The Lost Levels.
Okay. You know, what I want to say off the get-go, and what's really interesting about Lost Levels, is usually when a sequel to a game comes out, it's the same thing. Starts off easy, and then works its way to being harder, right? And what was interesting about Lost Levels is it almost felt like it continued on from World 8-4, if that makes sense, in regards to difficulty. Obviously, it wasn't quite as hard as World 8 in the beginning, but it was pretty difficult and tricky from the get-go, especially compared to Super Mario Bros. 1. So I did find that personally to be quite unique.
Some may know it as Super Mario Bros. 2, some know it as the Lost Levels, all know it as the most pain-inducing experience of the 80s. While it retained the original game's aesthetic, it significantly increased the difficulty. Now filled with traps, fake power-ups, and levels that demand clairvoyance to complete, Nintendo may have asked too much of their players, as it's trial and error at its worst.
Yeah, I just didn't think Lost Levels personally had the same flow as what Super Mario Bros. Did. Expert gamers probably have more of an appreciation what I did. And you know what? I guess the Japanese realized that because they gave the West Doki Doki Panic a reskin for Super Mario Bros. 2, if that makes sense. And, I mean, I'll let you be the judge. What do you think of Lost Levels? I think this deserves to be on the list, actually. It's a hard Mario game. Certainly the hardest one on NES. Harder than Mario 3, I think. Even if the levels are a little bit more, simplistic. Look at those bricks in the way. Just little
Teenage
details like
Mutant Ninja
that.
Turtles. I shouldn't have claimed the Lost Levels as the most pain-inducing experience of the 80s so early, because it gets way worse. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is difficult for one core reason. It is poorly designed. And no, I'm not making excuses. Despite featuring excellent graphics, good music, and the strength of its Konami name, the game is plagued by nearly impossible jumps, a terrible resource system, and crippling frame rate issues. By the time...
I don't know about the frame rate issues. I've never personally had anything wrong with that. But what was annoying to me is you'd always just gravitate to a couple turtles. At least I found. I'm just a casual gamer. The hardcores might disagree. But it was just annoying where you'd use Leonardo. He'd be pretty balanced. And then, even though he didn't have such a range of motion, Donatello was always really strong with his bow stick. But if you tried to use, like, Michelangelo or Raphael in the Turtles game, it always felt like you needed to hit all the enemies an extra 2 to 3 times. And it was almost like their weapons were made of that plastic from, like, Toys R Us, you know what I mean? And so, it just felt like a real big imbalance between the Turtles. As far as core design goes, didn't really have a problem with it. I might be looking at rose-colored goggles, though, because I have finally learned how to play this game over the last couple of years. And I'll admit, when I was a kid, I got up to the dreaded maze level in level 4, and I could never beat the game. So, I have more of an appreciation for it now. So, I mean, let me know what you think of Turtles anyway.
Most players reach the infamous swimming level. Watch out. The console is in danger of curb stomping.
The knockback was always pretty bad too.
Top Gun.
Okay. I've still not beaten Top Gun. A lot of people can. I haven't. I got up to that purple
Top Gun
sky
on the NES
level 1.
infamously featured 2 endings, which was uncommon for its time. The first ending has Maverick beating the bad guys and saving the world. The second had me shot-putting the NES controller through my little brother's head like a lawn dart. Flying and shooting down enemies isn't more difficult than in most dogfighting games. The real challenge is landing the plane, specifically landing on an aircraft carrier, which is nearly impossible. Even if you follow all of the on-screen instructions, you might still crash into the ocean or the arse of the ship.
You know, I'm usually pretty good at landing the ship, but I do play the landing challenge in our NES retro gaming challenge that we do every week for Beat or Eat It, but I digress. And, you know, when you put on the spot and you don't get absolutely everything perfect, it is still possible, even if you've mastered it, to crash every now and then. And you lose a life, you know. It's a shame that the landing just wasn't for bonus game points, if that makes sense. If you actually crash in Top Gun while landing, you lose a life. And it's not like you get any continues in this game. You know, I think you get your 3 or 4 lives. I don't know if you can even get extra lives. So you essentially get 3 lives to go through, what, about 5, 6 levels? And if you can't beat them in 3 lives, and that is it. And I think, being that it's also got a Konami logo on it, I think you'll agree with me when I say, yeah, this probably is in the top 20 hard NES games on the system.
Blaster Master.
I don't know how to play Blaster Master.
Blaster Master, like most entries on this list, lands in a category of phenomenal, awesome, fantastic, enjoyable, but way too hard. Many consider Blaster Master as one of the best NES games, but even its fans will admit it's immensely difficult. You have to beat the game in one sitting, and they certainly don't make it easy. All this because the protagonist followed his frog down a hole and encountered radioactive mutant monsters. What a piece of crap.
I just realised, yeah, you have to do it in one sitting. There's no password system, right? At least with Metroid, you got a password to resume where you left off. And I would compare both because they're both similar, sort of like Metroidvania-style experiences where you have to find where to go and collect items and things like that. But here's the thing with Metroid, pre-internet, even with the password system, I first played that when I was like 7 or 8 and finally beat it when I was 12. It takes just so much time to learn where to go in these games, especially without the internet. I would assume Blaster Master would be that kind of similar experience. But to have to start again every time you play the thing, hot damn, yeah, that's a good entry. That's a very fair entry based on that.
Mike Tyson's Punch-Out.
I don't really find this one that hard, but again, I spent so much time learning it.
I'm still heavily regretting my earlier claim about the most painful game of the 80s because 1986 to 1989 was just constant gut punches from Nintendo. The problem with Punch-Out is that each new set of fighters significantly increases the game's difficulty. This makes it nearly impossible for players to learn at a reasonable pace. To make matters worse, the game treats your accomplishments like you did absolutely nothing, and by the time you reach Mike Tyson's fight, it assumes you must be the perfect player.
Yeah, I know, right? It's just such a different stratosphere between Macho Man and Mike Tyson. And here's the thing, I learned how to play most of this game, again when I was 7 and 8 through my auntie's boyfriend and replicating everything that he did. And so I was playing the game, and after about a year I could beat everyone except for Mike Tyson. And then I think to finally beat Mike Tyson took me from the age of 9 to 10, so like literally a year to finally beat Mike Tyson. So, I mean, I would go as far as to say that Mike Tyson's one of the hardest NES bosses ever. There's so many people to this day that still haven't beaten Mike or can even have any kind of hope in hell of beating Mike. The rest of the game, however, pretty difficult. I do think it's debatable whether it can be in the NES top hardest games ever. But what this has got in common with a lot of other games is there's just so much trial and error involved in order to learn the game's mechanics and everything. Like, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out is a puzzle game disguised as a boxing game, and you have to know when to counter-attack and when certain moves are coming. It's also a game of memory, to be fair. And, yeah.
You can't beat fighters without learning their movesets.
It is a hard game, I
you can't
suppose,
practice
if you just play
without
it the
beating
first
every
time.
fighter before them to reach their level. Gauntlet.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Gauntlet, right, is it's a multiplayer experience from the arcade ported to NES for a solo experience. And it just took so much strategy in the arcades. You know, you'd have one person distracting mobs and then the other person going around and collecting items. And it was one of the earliest versions of a team-based game, because it really was. You didn't need to have a coordinated attack at all these dungeons. And to replicate that for a solo experience, yeah, I've played this one. It's pretty bloody hard. I don't even know if it's possible to beat. Let's see what he's got to say.
NES gamers eventually realized that most NES ports of arcade games would be mere shadows of their original versions, typically retaining only the crushing difficulty. Gauntlet took this to a new level, almost like they knew people would expect it to be lesser, so they made it even lesser. Maze-like levels, unintuitive puzzles, and the fact that your health is constantly dropping. This means you're solving these levels and puzzles while racing against a soft time limit. Gauntlet earned about an hour of my time before it got relegated to the bottom of the plastic tub I kept my NES games in.
Look, you know what? In small doses, I find Gauntlet on NES to be a fun dungeon crawling experience. I also completely know my ceiling as a gamer, and this is not something that I would ever in a million years ever expect to complete or beat. If you know how many levels this game has on the NES, by the way, let me know. It's a fun little time
Ninja
killer.
Gaiden 3, the ancient ship
Oh,
of
bro, 5 continues only? Oh, yeah, this is a good pick. This is a good pick. This is definitely the hardest of the 3. Oh, yeah.
Yay, our first entry for the 90s. And it didn't disappoint. Or it did, I'm not sure. The debate over which Ninja Gaiden game is the toughest will undoubtedly continue, but Ninja Gaiden 3 earns its spot on this list very comfortably. A limited continue system, overwhelming number of constantly respawning enemies, and floaty jump controls strip away everything you could rely on in previous Ninja Gaiden games to gradually progress. Much like Battletoads, the lack of any illusion that you can eventually beat it makes Ninja Gaiden 3 the least enjoyable entry of the 3.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been good at any of the Ninja Gaiden games, so I'm probably the wrong person to judge, but after playing number 1, number 2, number 3, I can safely say that number 3 was always the one that I made the least progress in. So just based on that, I think it's certainly the hardest. At least the other two kind of had a level of enjoyment in small doses. I just found it not fun. Oh, Ikari Warriors. So this is a tricky one for me. As I said, I'm hoping there are games in this that are just based on like a sound game design, but just difficult. I don't really think Ikari Warriors is a sound game design, to be honest. The arcade version was pretty fun but brutal, but there was just so many design flaws in the NES version of Ikari Warriors. Your players just always felt so sluggish, so slow and sluggish. It was easy to get overwhelmed. Plus, for some reason, your players' bullets couldn't go the same distance as what the enemy bullets were, so they always had so much more reach on you. And then, okay, fair enough, you could use the ABBA to respawn every time you died, which would give you a level of continuing to continue the game, I guess. But apparently you can't use that code in the final level. So I don't even know how people can even beat the NES version. But again, I'm just a casual gamer, but yeah, I don't think this is a well-designed game at all. Guerrilla War came out afterwards and it was way better.
Remember that episode of The Simpsons? The one where Bart wants the game Bone Storm, but instead Marge buys him Lee Carvolo's putting challenge? That was essentially my Christmas, but replaced Bone Storm with Contra and putting challenge with Ikari Warriors. Like Contra, Ikari Warriors fills the screen with deadly projectiles ready to ruin your day. Unlike Contra, Ikari Warriors' terrible controls, poor graphics, and hidden threats leave you never really sure why you're dying.
Yeah, for some reason this game, look, it just looks so sluggish, right? And the tank is kind of fun to use, but you can never stay in that thing for more than 5 seconds. Okay, so people seem to either love this game or hate this game. Big shout out to 8-Bit Steve who made a book on this, the easy way to teach people how to actually play this. But what I found hard about this game is the map system. You'd always look at the map, think you're going one direction, you'd actually be going the other direction. Also, I didn't understand the concept of item collection in this and just in general what I had to do. And so, but the funny thing is when people actually know how to play this game, apparently it can be beaten in less than 10 minutes. So, I mean, let me know your memories of Friday the 13th. It seems like people either like it or they don't. Not for me.
This game is infamous for several reasons, none of which are moderately enjoyable. It might not be remembered if it weren't adapted from a famous horror film series, or perhaps it would have been remembered for its extreme difficulty. The game is immensely challenging due to how goddamn confusing it is. With minimal help, you're left to figure out its awful mapping system before Jason kills off your fellow camp counselors. Also, we don't recall Jason wearing a purple tracksuit in the movies. The NES tracksuit became so famous, it was available as a Jason costume in the recent Friday the 13th multiplayer game.
Yeah, it was cool that in the multiplayer game you could wear that purple costume. But it looks like he's going out for a run. It doesn't look like he's going out to slash kids. And also, I don't know if it's just an in general Friday the 13th game or if it's supposed to be based off the original movie, because we all know it was actually Mrs. Voorhees in the first movie. I'm just going to assume it's just a basic Friday the 13th experience, not related to the films. What do you guys think? I mean, that's kind of cool.
Castlevania.
Surprised they put the first one in here. I think number 3
Castlevania was
is way
first
harder.
introduced on the NES in 1986, and its innovative mechanics, killer soundtrack, and impressive enemies quickly made it one of the most successful games on the console. Castlevania scales its difficulty with every step your character takes. Every action you commit to is final, and you can't readjust your trajectory once you jump or pull back your whip after you crack it. Because of this, every move must be deliberate with no room for error. The slightest mistake will cost you your life, and so many goddamn times it cost me my life. I'm one of the rare players who never committed and never beat this damn monstrosity. I do love it though.
Yeah. No, Castlevania is great, and it's one of those games I think that I played for the first time when I was 8, and then I finally beat it when I was 9, maybe 10. Used to get up early before school just trying to master it. I mean, the hardest bit about this game, I remember for me, was the Frankenstein boss. Took me forever to beat Frankenstein's monster at the end of level 4. Absolutely brutal, because I didn't know the holy water exploit at the time, so I'd just be throwing crosses, if that makes sense. Didn't take as long to learn the Grim Reaper boss. That was still pretty hard. And then Dracula I just stuck with, and I finally got it eventually. But all in all, probably took me a year to a year and a half to beat it. Do I think this deserves to be on the list? I don't know. I mean, Castlevania 3, which is a sequel to this, I feel like is much harder, and I couldn't even beat that game, to be honest, without using save states or aids or things like that. I probably would have put the third one in instead. However, this is a respectable pick. I can accept it, I suppose. It's just a game with good design that happens to be difficult. Speaking of which, we got another one here, Contra. Although I've started to slowly get a little bit better at Contra after a small amount of time.
You start with 30 lives, and you'll likely need most, if not all of them, to complete the game. Genuinely, most players have never touched the game without the code, because without the Konami code, you only get 3 lives, making Contra extremely difficult to beat. The game uses a one-hit, one-kill mechanic, meaning that any contact with enemies or hazards will instantly end your life. In standard gameplay, this means you can only get hit 3 times before you're forced to start over from the beginning. Let me say that louder for the people in the back. 3 hits!
Wait, is there no... There's a continue system in this, though, but I don't know where all the checkpoints are, because I have to admit I usually play this with a 30 lives code. With that being said, this game definitely has a big over-reliance on that spread shotgun, which will get you out of a lot of problems. And it does take a lot of concentration, learning the patterns on certain traps and things like that, especially in the mid part of the game. I find the middle part of the game actually harder than the end game of this. Final level's actually not that bad. Overall, I do have a goal of beating this in 1 credit without using the 30 lives code one day. I think I could do it. There's some talented people in our community who can actually beat this with no deaths. Here's to you, Joshy King. I think those legends are just nuts. I don't know how they do it, eh? I wouldn't put this in the top 20 hardest NES games, though. This is probably one where I'll disagree. Contra's a fun game to play. Sure, dying in 1 hit kind of sucks.
Zelda 2, The Adventure
But it is what it is, I guess. Zelda 2? Oh, it's an alright pick. I love this game, one of my favorites. But with that being said, you know, now not looking back with rose-tinted glasses, I absolutely dominate this game right now. But I look back and, you know, I probably again played this for the first time when I was 8 or 9 and didn't actually beat it till I was a late teenager. What makes this game really hard is not even just the mechanics of the fighting and the level and palace design or anything, but the puzzles, because again, pre-internet, I could actually get to the final palace, but I couldn't unlock the entranceway because I didn't know how to find all the other palaces to get the crystals and all the other secrets and things like that, if that makes sense. So just on the sheer, you know, cryptic nonsense that this game provides, I can certainly understand how hard it is. But when it comes to the mechanics of beating enemies and traversing the palaces themselves. I don't personally find it that bad. But yeah, I mean, I first played it when I was 8, probably beat it finally when I was 18, 19. I would class that as being a pretty difficult NES game.
The game that was so rough they stripped the legend straight out of the title. We don't mind that the second game switched from a top-down view to a side-scroller after the first game. What we do mind is Death Mountain. It's a dungeon level that is as unpleasant as being in an actual dungeon. And I'm talking about an aggressive BDSM dungeon. While there are some great Zelda games that all offer a fair challenge, Zelda 2 just pushed the difficulty a bit too far. I guess you gotta walk before you can run.
Yeah, a lot of people just wanted more of that top-down adventuring. They didn't want that. Oh, a couple of people have made me try this, and I just didn't know what I was doing, and the clunkiness and the isometric graphics and this and everything. I can understand that whoever made this game was trying to make a really awesome, appealing visual experience for an 8-bit console, but it completely missed the mark for me. I just picked this up for like 2 minutes, and I was like, nope. Nope. Yeah, this nonsense. I mean, it looks nice.
This game sounds like an early Evanescence song, and I don't know what would have been worse.
Yeah,
the Immortal is essentially a practical joke masquerading as a game. Its maze of traps and hidden danger means that the only way to progress through this nightmare is to cheat or repeatedly die until you figure out the exact pixels you can and cannot interact with. It has infamously inspired a long line of Flash games that operate similarly, forcing trial and error to be the game's main mechanic.
It doesn't do nothing for me. Hey, this is the one game on the list so far. If I never played it again, I'd be okay.
Castlevania III, Dracula's
so this one's on the list too, right. We were just talking about this.
Castlevania 3 makes Castlevania 1 look like a brisk walk in a park on a beautiful sunny day. Castlevania 3 is justifiably remembered for its notorious stairs. Many levels require you to climb stairs while dodging enemies and projectiles, but the stairs limit your movement to such a degree that you must navigate at a glacial pace to avoid everything. This design choice is cheap in a way that other games in the series often manage to avoid.
Yeah, I do agree on the cheapness of this game. And to be fair, the counter argument is you get multiple characters that help you easily take on certain areas and others. I usually just use Trevor because I'm a basic bish. I like the whippy nay guy. But I just felt like this game, it's not even the bosses that were so bad, although some were pretty difficult. But what I found really hard was there was always like an axe knight in a position that just felt like it was absolutely impossible to jump over like an axe. Or there was this tower gauntlet in the middle of the game where you have to go up the staircases and constantly avoid like multiple projectile bullets and things like that. And, I mean, some people can traverse those levels just fine. Hey, power to you. But I just found it to be incredibly unfair and unenjoyable myself personally. A little bit more used to it now, but I still find flaws with it.
Death traps, topped off by a brutally challenging 3-stage boss fight that forces you to start the level over if you die at any point. It's a beautifully nightmarish game.
Beautifully nightmarish game. That is a pretty nice analogy for this experience, actually.
Mega Man.
So this was the first Mega Man game I grew up with. Again, started as a rental, then I finally got a copy of it when I was 8 and 9. Again, I don't think I beat this for the first time until I was 12 and 13. I think to this day, I've only ever beaten the Yellow Devil in the final stage legitimately in NES Mega Man, maybe 2 or 3 times with the patience. I usually use that select exploit to beat those end-level bosses, which is cheating, but it is what it is. Yeah, this is a difficult Mega Man experience. Like, all Mega Man games are pretty hard. But the first one was when it came, before it refined the gameplay to be a smoother experience, I guess, if that makes sense. So, yeah, pretty good pick, I suppose.
Credited with starting off a new era of NES difficulty, continues to be one of the hardest NES games ever, even after years of tough competitors. In fact, it continues to be one of the hardest games of all time, period. The original Mega Man is challenging for the same reasons as other retro Mega Man games. Tricky platforming, tough bosses, and resilient enemies. However, this entry, unlike later entries, has no energy tanks, No passwords and less refined controls. It's a brutal romp through a brutal game, and you may find yourself blue in the face.
I do find Mega Man 4, 5, and 6 to be much harder in this one, though, to be fair. But it could just be because I haven't played those ones as much and mastered the enemy bosses. But also, I think with Mega Man 1, it's also a lot shorter, so the experience is not as bad. At least it's over quickly, you know? It's like ripping off a Band-Aid in comparison.
Fester's Quest.
I just don't know what to do in this game. It kind of looks somewhat fun to play, and I picked it up and just walked around for like 5-10 minutes.
It's hard to believe that a game based on the 1960s Addams Family series could be considered one of the hardest NES games of all time. But over the years, it has proven itself deserving of that dubious honor for all the wrong reasons. Most of the difficulty in Fester's Quest stems from the game's problematic controls. Fester moves as if he's as disinterested in the game as you are, yet you're expected to navigate tight spaces filled with endlessly respawning enemies that offer no breathing room.
Yeah. Also, by the way, save your thumbs. If I was you, especially if you're playing this on emulation, set up some turbo buttons. Trust me, you'll get carpal tunnel or whatever they call it otherwise.
Unintuitive puzzles and bizarre first-person segments that were poorly conceived from the start make Fester's Quest challenging for, and I hate to repeat myself, all the wrong reasons.
I just never knew what to do. I just never know what to do. There are people that really like Fester's Quest, though. You like
The
Fester's
Adventures
Quest?
of Bayou Billy.
Oh, it's a good pick. This is a good pick, and this is one of those games that I was a lot better at when I was a kid, Bayou Billy. I rented this out a couple times, and like I said, you didn't have the same choice when you were a kid. You know, when you had a few games, whether you just rented them or you owned a couple games in your collection, you just learned to love them or at least enjoy them, right? If you rented out a weekly game like Bayou Billy, you were stuck with it for the week. You didn't have anything else to play, so you just made the most of a bad situation. And so I did okay at this as a kid. Like, it was really, really tedious, but in the end I sort of got the hang of it, and I think I could get to the second Jeep level, which is 2/3 of the way through the game, if I'm not mistaken. But going back and trying to play this now, I can't even get past one level. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that it takes about 20 hits, if not more, to beat a single basic enemy, yet you pretty much lose all your health in a matter of a couple hits. It's just absolutely nonsense. And the programming and the balance of I would actually go as far as to say Bayou Billy is poor video game design. So based on that, I don't know if I would have put it on the list. But yeah, look, the game sucks. It does. It's a shame. I like being a Crocodile Dundee sunbish, but it didn't work out.
Side-scrolling levels in Bayou Billy are among the toughest in the genre, and that includes TMNT. But the game's driving levels also stand out as some of the most difficult driving sequences on a console notorious for its challenging driving games. Additionally, the light gun levels are incredibly tough and nearly unbeatable even with a functioning NES Zelda.
I didn't mind the light gun
levels.
Mine
never was. That said, credit is due to Konami for creating a game called The Adventures of Bayou Billy that is so difficult it continues to be discussed over 30 years later.
Don't forget the light gun levels. You could cheat by putting the light gun right up against the CRTV and just following everyone. So essentially, it's almost like you're using a mouse, if that makes sense. So the light gun, if you were cheating, weren't that bad.
Trust the publishers of Metal Gear to turn some weirdness into magic.
Look at this. This is nonsense.
Ghosts and Goblins.
Oh, yeah, it's a good pick. This is a good pick. The furthest I've ever gotten in this game was to the final level. I didn't even beat the final level. I got up to the final level on a weekly rental in 1993, and then after that, I just couldn't put myself through that experience again. It wasn't until I became a streamer that I found out when you finally beat the final level, you had to loop and do the whole game all over again. What the fuckity fuck McFuck, man? That is absolutely terrible. Yeah, traumatic. I used to love watching the big kids play this in the arcade. This is one of those games I'd rather watch other people play. Ghosts and Goblins has been known for its difficulty for so long that it's easy to overlook why the game is so goddamn hard in the first place. However, just a few minutes with this notorious game will quickly reveal that the game's enemies are the reason. The basic enemies in Ghosts and Goblins could easily serve as mini-bosses in lesser games. Adding to the challenge, there's really only one effective weapon available, and you only have 2 hits before you die. And this NES only has 2 more deaths before it dies. Of kicking. Battletoads. Yeah, see, Battletoads is probably one of the most overrated games on NES of all time. And I've said this in a previous video, but the thing that Battletoads suffers with is it does too many things and it doesn't know what it wants to be. So, you've got these beat 'em up levels, and then you've got some of these platforming levels. You've got these levels where you're on like a surfboard thingy, or like one of those speed cars, if that makes sense, the turbo tunnel. And it does so many different things, but it doesn't really do any of those one things exceptionally well. And so it literally is one of those games that's a jack of all trades, but a master of nothing. With that being said, some people love this. Is it one of the hardest games ever? Sure. So there are some expert gamers that can beat this. I've never ever beaten this game, and I've beaten some pretty hard NES games. I think this is a pretty good entry. It's a pretty damn good entry.
Yes, we all know that Battletoads' legendary speed bike level epitomizes NES difficulty and is a shared experience of gaming frustration from that era. But for those who dedicated time to mastering this sequence, you come to learn that it is only a slither of the difficulty this game's levels have to offer. Rat Race and Terror Tubes being the highlight for difficulty and brutal trial and error. On top of the game's already crushing difficulty, co-op mode is designed to make you despise your playing partner, with a melee-friendly fire that's nearly impossible to avoid, to a shared life total that ends your run when one player dies, which they may well in real life, because I'm sick of restarting this game.
The only way I could beat the turbo tunnel these days is if I'm clever
Silver
enough to get the
Surfer.
warp zone. Oh, Silver Surfer. Now, this is an interesting pick. You know what? This is probably number one. And I actually kind of agree with Silver Surfer. And what's really cool about Silver Surfer is if you can get the hang of it, it's actually fun to play. But then you die, and I think when you die, you go all the way back to the beginning of the level. Forgive me, it's been a long time. I don't remember what the checkpoint system on this one is like, even if there is one. But yeah, I mean, you think games like Life Force and Gradius and all that kind of stuff is hard when it comes to like horizontal shooters? Nah, Silver Surfer is where it's at. And it's one of those interesting things where the gameplay itself is actually quite fun, but the difficulty, bro, I mean, this is not your mum and dad's Silver Surfer, that's for damn sure. It's, oh my gosh. I'll let the guy talk.
By design, side-scrolling flight action games are meant to be hard. However, Silver Surfer takes this concept to a whole new level. The game would already be difficult with its bullet
there's a
hell death
horizontal
maze
level, that's
patterns, but
right.
it becomes notoriously memorable due to its poor visual
Forgot
design,
about them.
which makes it nearly impossible to distinguish between projectiles and the environment. The reason why this game is spectacularly difficult is because of the poor game design. It isn't charming like Dark Souls or beautiful like Elden Ring, it's just a bad game, putting all responsibility onto the player.
Well, again, yeah, it is bad in the sense that it's just way too hard. But it doesn't play like us. Like, again, the game is notorious difficult. Like, we're talking 9 or 10 out of 10 difficult. But as far as, like, picking it up and playing it, like, the controls are fun. But I guess that counts as bad design. I mean, if it's too hard for, like, little Billy, 9 years old, playing this in Christmas time, then, yeah, it's probably not what it should be.
Did you enjoy this video?
I did enjoy this, Mojo Plays. Thank you very much. Please make sure you're subbing to Mojo Plays and to us as well. If you have any other hardest games of all time on NES that you think should have been on the list, let us know. Appreciate you watching, and we'll see you legends on another video. Take care, everybody.